Hello guys and welcome back to Connor Reads. Today I'm going to be doing a review and summary of The Human Son by Adrian Walker. This book was recommended to me by my buddy Kurt. So Kurt, if you're watching, thank you so much. And today's review is going to be with no spoilers. So I'm going to do a brief summary, some positives, some negatives, and then just go through my overall recommendation for the book. So let's hop into it. So the first thing I have to say is that I read this book in 2 days, in 2 sittings. So I was absolutely glued to it. And if I were to describe the genre of this book, and initially I thought it was going to be a sci-fi book, and it was, but I think really what it was more of a love story, and I'll explain. So this book is set on Earth, but it's not as we know it. The actual timing of the book is about 500 years in the future, and we are following some beings called the Urta. Now the Urta were created by humans 500 years prior to that, so roughly in the modern day, maybe about 50 years forwards from where we are right now. The reason that the Urta were created is because humans were killing the planet. The atmosphere was changing, there were disasters everywhere because of what we'd done to the planet, and a scientist decided to create something to help us clean up the planet because we were doing a terrible job ourselves. And the Urta are created. Now they're similar to humans, but there are some big differences as well. Some things were added to them. So they have much superior brain processing power. They are much stronger than us, and they live a lot longer than us as well, due to the way that their body breaks down and fights diseases and illnesses. But more importantly, the reason they were so effective at helping clear up and fix the planet is what was left out. So a lot of things were left out of them, things like shame, guilt, envy, sloth, greed, all the things that the creators believed that were holding humans back. And so the Urta were created. Now the Urta knew what their purpose was. It was to save the planet. And they quickly summarized, being very intelligent beings, that the fastest way to save the planet was for humans not to be on it anymore. So what they did was they created some kind of vaccine that stopped humans being able to reproduce, and then they allowed us to live our last generation or two on the planet, and then humans died out. They then spent the next 500 years fixing the planet and righting all the wrongs that humans did on the planet. As we join the story, they have just completed this mission. So like I said, about 500 years into the future, maybe 550. And what their goal now is to leave the planet. But before they go, there's one thing they have to decide. They were created by humans, and they made a promise to humans that they would consider reintroducing them to the planet. So the big question is, how do they figure out whether they are going to or not? Being very logical beings, they decided that they need more data to be able to make this decision. So they decide that they're gonna create or give birth to one human, and they're gonna raise it from ages 0 to 16. And based on that data, they're gonna make their decision as to whether humans should be reintroduced to the planet whilst they leave the planet. And bearing in mind, they just spent 500 years fixing the thing that we broke. Now, the premise for this book was absolutely incredible. So I'm going to jump into a couple of things that I loved about this book. The first thing that I love about this book is the explanation of the Urta's technology and how they went about fixing the planet. I'm not a scientist, but everything that Adrian put in there, he'd obviously done a ton of research. It made a lot of sense. Like, he had detailed explanations as to the science behind it and how they went about doing things, the logic behind it, and you can tell it's something that either he is incredibly fixated on as a person, or it's just something that he seems to understand to a high degree as well. And I suppose what my point is he had enough information with enough intelligence in there for me to 100% believe in this story, and believe that the Urta could have fixed the planet, and believe that we are where we're at when I start reading, which is so important for books like fantasy books and sci-fi books, to have enough attention to detail where it's a believable story. The second thing I loved is the perspective. Because of the Urta being created to be a lot more logical than us and to lack a lot of the emotions that we have, the perspective was incredible to read from. And we read the entire book from an Urta called Ima, and she is the one raising the child. Now, Ima is really, really intelligent. She was charged, because each Urta is created slightly different to be good at something else, because they had a lot of planet to fix. She was the one who fixed the skies, so took all of the harmful things out of the atmosphere. So she's a very, very intelligent and logical Urta, even for Urtas. So another thing I loved was her perspective, like reading about raising a child from a super logical perspective was incredible. How Urters interact with each other, how they think about things. They do things like they never gossip because they don't see the point in it. And there's just so many cool concepts that come from their society. And Adrian has gone into such depth creating this society in his head that I enjoyed it so much, the intricacies of it, reading about it. The second thing that I loved about this book was he made it so easy for me to continue reading. And what I mean by that is the end of each paragraph or the end of each chapter had not so much a obvious cliffhanger, but it was quite an obvious statement. Like, and I don't want to say it was clumsy, but it was almost childlike in the way they would hang like a big juicy secret or something exciting gonna happen in the last couple of sentences before the next chapter. And you know, normally I would think, oh, it's kind of childish, maybe like a young adult book, but the concept of the book was so good and the way he's told the story was so incredible that I didn't mind. I loved reading the last couple of sentences because I knew it was going to convince me to read the next chapter, even though I should have gone to bed probably like 3 hours before that, but I just couldn't. He managed to get me going through the entirety of the book, like I said, in 2 days, in 2 sittings, because it was such a compelling read. One of the things I didn't love so much about the book was he built the world incredibly in the first half of the book. It was awesome. And in the second half of the book, there wasn't a drop off, but for a book that I believe, I might be completely wrong, should be in like the sci-fi realm, and because I normally read fantasy, I think the action scenes like nearer to the end, and you know, where things start to really happen and the story progresses quickly, as all books do near the end, I think they lacked a bit. I know we could have had a bit more character development on some of the characters involved there. I felt like the action could have been described better. And I think that might be just because my perspective is from somebody who reads fantasy all the time, and a lot of authors in fantasy over-describe and go into such depths. Sometimes they take meandering chapters, you know, 4 or 5 chapters out of the way, and this book doesn't do that. And it kind of makes sense that it doesn't, because it is from such a logical perspective. It would be strange that it would, but I just feel like maybe an extra 20, 30, 40 pages near the end chapters I would have benefited from. So I suppose, you know, that's only a negative from my perspective, but a negative nonetheless. I think I said nonetheless, which is not a word. Final thing that I loved about this book, and there was so much, is that there were so many parts of this book where I felt so proud of being a human. I feel like I fell in love with humans, even though I am one, and obviously everyone I interact with, minus my dogs, are humans as well. But I just feel like I needed like a reminder and like a nudge to be like, oh yeah, why am I not super excited about life all of the time? Like, it is a miracle that everybody's here. It's incredible that we're on this huge rock spinning around this galaxy, able to interact and articulate ourselves and the technology we've created, and just such small things that we forget to get excited about. I feel like this gave me a new lease of life. And Adrian Walker is incredible at helping you to those epiphanies and helping you to get excited about being a human. And weirdly, like as a human, I am learning via Ima, who is an Urta, an imaginary character, who is getting her revelations from a human in the book. So it's like Inception. He's teaching me about me via a creature that doesn't exist, who's learning it from a human in a book. And it was just mind-blowing, and there were so many beautiful ways that he did this in the book. One such example is Ima is getting a bit stressed out from raising a child. As you know, if anyone's interacted with a child, I'm sure you can sympathize there. And like I said, her role was she is the person who fixed the sky. So she has this, you know, super futuristic hot air balloon type thing that she would roam the skies in to do her experiments and fix everything. So she decides to take that hot air balloon out to try and de-stress. And she's traveling, and it's beautiful descriptions of the world around them. And eventually she says this: so this was my destination. Not really a place, but a feeling. And she's talking about the idea that she was traveling around on the hot air balloon trying to de-stress, and what was she actually looking for? And it turns out it was more a feeling she was looking for than an actual destination in the hot air balloon. And I just thought it was so profound. Like, I had to stop reading and be like, wow, that's an incredible thought. You know, how often is life like that? Like, it's not the things around us you know, so to speak, that really matter. It's more the feeling that we're searching for, and it was incredible. And like I said, it kind of gave me epiphanies throughout the course of reading this book, like to remember to be excited about feeling, and that all of my experiences as a human come through my brain and they're filtered through there. So like I decide the perspective, I decide the feeling, and sometimes feelings are the destination. How crazy is that? Do you get a message like that from, you know, a random book recommended by a friend? Another conversation, I don't have time in this video to give you the full in-depthness of it because it was incredible. It's probably spaced over like 4 or 5 pages. I'm not going to read them and ruin the book for anybody. But essentially, we do get some flashbacks of the period of time where the Urta are going about fixing the world and the last human generations are kind of just sitting around waiting to die, but some have decided to help the Urta. And it's an interaction she has seeing somebody, a human, pray. Now the Urta, as very logical beings, have decided that they don't believe in religion, so she's struggling to understand this concept of God and why this human would be praying. And there is such an incredible explanation and kind of understanding given to her from an Urta who was created the generation before her. And it's on pages 159 through to 161. So if you do decide to go and get this book, once you get there, please write a comment and just let me know what you thought about that explanation, because I thought it was incredible. And my final negative is that I feel like, you know, reading this book, I had been taking being a human for granted. You know, I was a bit sad and shocked at how I had lost a lot of curiosity and excitement from day to day. And, you know, I do thank the book for giving me that new perspective and helping me to get really excited about small things again. And you'll know what I mean if you pick up this book. It's incredible. But yeah, it was kind of shocking. I was like, wow, I'm taking a lot for granted. Like, and I shouldn't be. Like, we only get one go around, and there's so much exciting about being a human and the world around us. So, you know, that was a bit of a negative. And alongside that, and piggybacking off that, it does kind of expose us to a scary message of, you know, maybe where the world is going and, you know, the extreme measures that might need to be taken because of how humans are going around the planet. And whether you believe in climate change or not, regardless, we are pumping a ton of plastic into the seas, and a lot of the practices that we undertake as humans are quite damaging to the planet, like deforestation, etc. as well. So it is quite a real and raw message of, you know, we need to probably take some action, otherwise, you know, maybe we won't create Urta and superhuman beings in the future, but maybe the Earth will decide that, you know, we don't deserve to be here anymore and, you know, hit us with an ice age or something. I don't know. It's a bit of a wake-up call as well. So would I recommend this book? Absolutely. And for a few reasons. Number one, if you ever struggle to read outside of your genre, which I really did until this last 6 months or so where I made this channel, I would only read fantasy books. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. However, reading outside of your genre is really useful for a few reasons, and it can definitely make you fall in love with reading again. Reason number one, you may just read outside of your genre and absolutely fall in love with it. Like I said, this book, I think it was like sci-fi mixed with romance, but not romance as in, you know, an adult relationship with each other, but more like romance for a whole species, or an idea of a species anyway. So if you do decide to read outside your genre and you fall in love with it, then all of a sudden you have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of books that you now know that you will at least semi-enjoy because it's of the same genre. So that's one way that reading outside your genre can help you fall back in love with reading, because it's exciting that you have so much new material to read in a whole new genre. The second way is if you do pick up a new genre and you don't fall in love with it, then oftentimes, but you know, still enjoy it enough to read it, oftentimes it will give you a new lease of life of going back to the genre that you loved. And someone explained this to me the other day, and they called it a palate cleansing book, and I thought that was such a cool idea. And I'll be honest, since I've been reading different types of books, I've been reading some classics, more self-help books, some history books, political books, I suppose now some sci-fi and romance. Like, every single time it has made me more excited to go back to fantasy books, because it is a palate cleanser and I have all these new ideas. And if you only, for me anyway, if I only read fantasy back to back to back to back to back, it didn't get boring because I love it, but you know, variety is the spice of life, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say there. So I recommend this book to anybody. You will feel emotions reading this book, joy, sadness, dare I say love. So go grab this book and then let me know what you think of it in the comments. Outside of that, I appreciate you guys watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. I would love to have you as a part of the community, and hopefully see you next time. Thank you for watching.